All right, how's it going, everybody? Adrian here from the Gaming Observer, and man, we're going to be doing a very special show today for the second year in a row. We're going to be doing some Game of the Year Game of the Year awards, or personal recommendations, our own personal games of the year that we played through 2021. We're at the end of January, but I think that's good. I think it's okay to do a little bit of a late Game of the Year show. I think everybody else is doing it early. Anyway, I would like to introduce the people who are joining me here today. As always, my esteemed co-host, Katosepe.
Hey, how's it going?
Just swell, thank you. And again, for the second year in a row, we'd like to welcome the Game Professor, who runs the Games as Literature YouTube channel. Sam, how you doing?
Hey, doing well, it sure was 2021, so...
It sure was.
It sure was. That's very apt. So hey, folks, I think what's really great about the three of us doing this show is the fact that none of us are particularly like, hey, we need to play the latest and greatest video games. We really are just like to see what's going on in the world of video games and play the ones that we're most interested in. But we're also pretty big into indies. We're pretty big into the smaller stuff that might not get the mainstream attention. But we also, play a lot of other games that don't come out through the year. At least for me, it's because of financial reasons. I don't want to pay $60 for a new video game every year, but there's also just the interest thing. But nonetheless, it's a little bit of a different show because we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. We're going to start with the games that came out last year and the games that we played and the games that we loved, and more of your traditional discussion of games of the year. Then we'll move on to what are some of the games that did come out last year that we didn't get the opportunity to play and wished that we could have, and some of the reasons behind that. And then we're just going to move to, honestly, a discussion of games that we played last year, even if they did not come out last year, because, hey, they were new to us, and it's valuable to talk about them anyway, and if nothing else, it'll be a nice little list of recommendations of games to check out. Or maybe not recommendations if you didn't like the game. I don't know if we're talking about anything today that we didn't like, but anyway. So let's just jump right into it, honestly. Let's start talking, and I think what makes most sense is exactly what we did last year. We just go one by one, games that we want to talk about. And I'll just pass it off to Kato first. Tell me a game that you played last year that you really loved that came out. All right, we had some technical difficulties there. Apologies for that. It's on trend for this show. We started off with a lot, and hopefully it'll sustain itself through this video. But if I come back in every now and then being like, sorry for the technical difficulties, it might just happen. Anyway, Kato, I was passing it off to you. Do you want to tell me about a game that you played last year that released last year that you really liked?
Yeah, I really think it's hard to talk about 2021 gaming and not talk about Valheim, which has been this kind of secret hidden success story in gaming where it just came from nowhere. I don't know if you guys had heard about it before it came out. I think I heard about it the week it was coming out.
Yeah, only after it came out, which I thought was before this year. What a long year. Okay.
Yeah. I know, right? I know. I didn't... we had a document going of games. We were trying to write it down in advance before the show, and it wasn't until last night when I was actively playing Valheim that I was like, this was from this year. This is still 2021. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, that's been a game. It's still in early access, but I feel like anyone who's spent time with it knows it feels like a full-fledged game at this point. And I've clocked over 100 hours now in Valheim, just building stuff, going around fighting the bosses. There is no story to speak of at this point. Just a boss checklist to defeat. But it's everything I wanted from a game back in 2004, 2005. Just having skills for every action you can think of that increase as you do them, the weapon skills, but also just running and jumping and swimming and all this stuff. The food system is bizarre, and yet it works later on after you spend some time with it. Just a wonderful, wonderful game. And it's janky as all get out, but I love it so much.
Yeah, Valheim was one of those games that I feel like you said, it really came out of nowhere, and it's from this very small studio, and they sold 8 million copies, 6 million copies, absolutely bonkers, something that a AAA studio would be happy with, and they just knocked it out of the park. So Yeah, I think what a lot of people said when that game came out was this is the survival game that isn't annoying, or basically the equivalent of that cuts out a lot of the annoying stuff. And yeah, I played it as well, and it was a lot of fun, even just on your own. I feel like I play a lot of survival games, and they're not really my thing, but I was playing Valheim, and I had great fun with it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like once it's out of early access.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I know the last update was massive. It had a lot of customization stuff that they threw in there. And I know they have at least 3 more massive updates planned before it's coming out of early access. So it's going to be a very different game by that point.
Did you play it at all, Sam?
I didn't know. I did hear about it. I'm in enough gaming circles and indie gaming circles on Twitter and such that I definitely heard of it, but I didn't try it out for myself. Yeah, I'm interested to at some point for sure. It's not that survival isn't exactly my genre, but I can enjoy them, and with all the hubbub about it, I should definitely give it a shot. I just haven't yet.
It's so weirdly janky that even if you normally that would tell me, no, if you don't like survival games, you should not try Valheim. And yet it's janky in such a way that it almost doesn't matter if you've liked other survival games. Yeah. It's so different and bizarre that
honestly, the right kind of jank, the right kind of jank can really elevate a game in a weird way, I think. So that's valid.
Yeah, it's worth giving it a try. Yeah, and if you've got friends, it's a good single player, it's good multiplayer. It was definitely good enough to be one of my top games of 2021.
Sam, do you want to take the next one?
Sure. I guess I should just go ahead and talk about my what is my game of the year, in that it is also the reason not the entire reason. This was a weird year for me. I didn't play a whole lot of the new games this year, and part of that is because I had a situation where I lost my job and was trying to do Games as Lit full-time and raise enough money to actually make that work, which didn't quite work out, but still helped a lot. I'm working part-time now and doing Games as Lit for the rest of it, so that's nice. But point being, thanks. Point being, I didn't really have the money, like a new $60 or $70 game would come out and I'd be like, that looks great. I can't just throw, $60 or $70 at a new game right now. So there were a lot of games that I wanted to play but just didn't quite get the chance to. The other problem is that my game of the year took over my entire life because I'm talking about Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. Of course, Endwalker being the game of this year, but Final Fantasy XIV being a thing that existed beforehand. I don't even want to actually say how. Okay, so I found out that I could check my playtime. I started Final Fantasy XIV late last year, and when I checked at the end of this year to see how long I had played, it comes out to about a month out of last year.
Wow.
Dude, MMOs, they do that. The time just disappears.
I don't even, that's the thing. This is the first MMO I've really gotten into. I tried WoW briefly. I tried The Secret World with a friend briefly. Didn't really get into either of those. I did get into Wakfu for a little while because an MMO turn-based tactics thing is really cool, and also the show is amazing, and I love it. So, I tried that. That was fine. But, man, 14 just sucked me in something fierce. And I was wanting to catch up in time for Endwalker, and then I did. And like half of the games that are on my Game of the Year list for this one, I haven't actually technically finished it quite yet. I am almost at the end of Endwalker, and that's just the story, not even the post-game content. Hopefully there's lots of new Hildebrand stuff because I love him, but I'm almost to the end of the story. But man, it's really good. Final Fantasy XIV is really good. I love it a lot. I also finally got my wife playing it, and so, they're just now obsessing over it. Got through the entirety of Heavensward in the last week or two. It's really good. And Endwalker in particular, just in a lot of ways it's more of the same. It's not a sequel, it's an expansion, so the basic mechanics and stuff remain essentially the same, just with new challenges that do interesting new things, and of course new story stuff, which is essentially wrapping up the story of the game so far. They're treating it like the end of this story, and then we'll be moving on to other new stories, I guess. And it is just working really well so far. It's got its weak points. I don't know if it'll overtake Heavensward as my favorite, expansion story arc of Final Fantasy XIV, but it's close. It's really good. Unless they terribly botch the ending, it'll be up there. So, oh man, Endwalker's great. 14 is amazing, and it's part of the reason why I haven't played as many new games as I wanted to this year. So that's
What was it about? You said you've tried other MMOs. What was it about Final Fantasy XIV over those other MMOs that attracted you to it so heavily?
I mean, this, for a guy who runs a show called Games as Literature, this isn't going to be surprising, but a lot of it was the story, of course. It has a focus on story that even like other people who are really into MMOs have told me is extremely irregular for MMOs. That's just a whole lot of what it is. The stories are long and involved, and you get into it as much for that as anything else. But what really ended up sucking me into it after that was the fact that was the job system. Because in Final Fantasy XIV, you don't choose a class and then play that class throughout the entire game. You choose a class, and then once you level it up past a certain point and get to a certain point in the story, you can take on any of the classes, any and all of them, all of the battle classes, any crafting classes, gatherings, stuff like that. There's a lot to do that once you do get invested in the mechanics, it has a whole lot of content that's very rewarding to try out, and also adds to, they always joke that the end game of Final Fantasy XIV is glamours. And yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that, before playing this game, that I would end up being super into finding cute outfits for my Catgirl character in a video game, but I am. So that's a thing that it sucked me in by virtue of the story at first, but then I guess kind of like, because that's what happened to me with my first Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy VII. I'd never played a turn-based game before. I was like, this is weird. I don't know if I like this, but the story sucked me in, and then I loved everything about it by the end. And that's just what happened here, pretty much. The story and characters of the first part of the game aren't amazing, but they're, good, and then it gets really good after that, and that just sucked me in enough that the whole game just... yeah, it's good. So it started with the story, and then it was everything else, I guess.
So I'm curious, as a mostly solo gamer, like I don't play a lot of multiplayer stuff, how much of that game can I play if I don't have a group that I'm like scheduling time with?
All of it. Like
all of it.
Yeah, most of the story stuff is single player, and then when you do the dungeons and stuff, you can put yourself in a queue, line up. Like there is very little. There are some like extra little side things that you need to put together a group for, but that, I'm talking extra little side things, things to get you some extra crafting items or something. Nothing actually important. You could get through the entire story and try all of the jobs and classes and stuff without ever, adding anyone to your friends list.
Man.
So.
Well, now I need to download that, and I guess I know what I'm doing in 2022. So.
Yeah, well, once they let you try the free trial again,
That's true. I have to
Endwalker
wait, right? It's not all the time.
And Endwalker got the game so popular that they had to shut down you couldn't even buy the game and pay for a subscription to get in anymore. Unless you already had, you couldn't buy a new copy. And they are, I think, sometime in the next couple days, they're letting people buy new copies again. But if you buy it, then you have to do that, $13 to $15 a month subscription to continue playing. They're not letting free players start again for a little while longer. So
isn't that a phenomenon?
Just got big.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Sorry, guys. Like, just this idea that a game is so popular that the developers can no longer handle it. Like, what a great problem to have, right?
No
I know, right? Yeah, it's the game's kind of, especially given the whole, like, the way that they created Final Fantasy XIV like 10 years ago, and it was so bad that they basically shut it down and remade the entire game. Like, for that success story to lead to this degree of success, it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah,
so
we hear stories all the time of games going free to play when their popularity's kind of waning. They're like, all right, we need more players in, time to go free to play. I can't think of a time where a game has ever gone back.
Yeah.
Like, never mind. Actually, it's not free to play anymore. You have to buy it again.
And they've got such a great system now because they do let you play it for free through the first expansion. Heavens, there are internet jokes about this. I'm sure that everyone's heard that.
Yeah.
But like, the fact is that Heavensward is my favorite at least until Endwalker, my favorite of the expansions. It gets so good at that point that, like, of course you're going to, if you've gotten that far, you're gonna want to subscribe and get further because that second expansion is just so incredible. So it's a good system. It works for them clearly, and it's just a very good game. I did not expect to be sucked in like this, but I ended up literally spending a month out of my last year playing it. So,
That's incredible.
yeah, that happened.
Well, that's
What have
that's
you been playing, Adrian?
yeah. Thanks. I'm gonna go the opposite direction. You just talked about a game that's so popular the developers couldn't handle it. I'm gonna talk about a game that I would hazard a guess nobody listening to this show has heard of unless they heard me talking about it. It's my game of the year, and it's called Super Auto Pets.
I've heard of that.
Googling that, I guess.
Feel free to do that, and you're gonna probably be a little surprised when you take a look at the screenshots. But Super Auto Pets is a game I think made by 2 people, maybe 1 person. It kind of came out to very little fanfare. Nobody, it was a very minor release. I think they were on itch.io, right? It was one of those games that you would just see just kind of scrolling through the new releases. And I happened to be there the day that a very large Twitch streamer was like, what are we going to play today? I don't know. So he went to the new Steam releases and he went, oh, this looks funny. And he clicked play. And oh my God, it ended up being an incredible game. Extremely, extremely good. It's an auto battler along the lines of Teamfight Tactics or Dota Underlords or any of those genres. However, I tried playing those games and I didn't enjoy them very much. Something about that combat did not appeal to me very, very much.
Right.
Then Super Auto Pets just simplified the whole process, made it very, very simple, graphically and mechanically, and it ended up being a game that I got lost in more than any other game I've been lost in a very, very long time. Time just sucked away. And I would in the morning, I'd have my tea and I'd boot up, 2 quick games of Super Auto Pets. All of a sudden, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm like, oh my God, I was supposed to work today. So I worked an evening shift rather than the morning shift like I usually do. It's just one of those games. And I don't know, just the fact that something that uses literal emojis as their art, right? These are emojis that they take from the keyboards of Google and the open source.
That makes sense. I looked at the screenshots and didn't catch on to that, but of course, yes, it is. Oh, sheesh. Okay.
And all of their resources and assets are, I think, open source, right? Like they credit them, and that's all they have to do. How that game can be so good is beyond me. I don't get it. And now, because of this Twitch streamer, he's gone on to share it with his Twitch friends, and now the game is actually quite popular. They're able to sustain it and add features to the game, introduce new animals, etc., etc. But man, if you're looking for a hidden gem, like this is the place to go. Seriously, like I wish more people were talking about it in the Game of the Year list. So I have to be that change, But yeah,
Yep.
I highly recommend you go check it out. And I know I got Kato on it as well.
Yeah, which I spent about 8 hours the first day I downloaded it. Just totally addicted. Yeah, it's just so simple. It's so easy. I've actually been really trying to replace it on my phone as just I'm like, I need something else because this meta is driving me nuts now. After many, many, many hours of loving that game, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I'm like trying to find something else, and I recently downloaded Legends of Runeterra, and I'm like, this is just too complicated. I just want to buy Turtle. I just want to buy Turtle.
I think that is the beauty of that game as well, is if you watch anybody play it, it is like kind of mind blowing because they're like, oh, we gotta put the turtle in front of the elephant because then the elephant's gonna hurt the camel and the camel will hit the peacock and peacock's attack will go up, and then you put the melon armor on it and he gets the garlic, and it's just like a barrage of terms, and then you go into a battle and you fight somebody else who did the exact same thing as you, and then you just gotta try and make the best team that you can. I ended up falling off of the game like after I had like my real binge with it. But man, that's it. I don't know. It just had to go on my list. And out of all, honestly, like I looked at my list of games that I played this year and I was like, this is the one I enjoyed the most. So there you go. Super Auto Pets. It's not what I would have expected, but it's my game of the year.
I think it's deserved. Yeah, so I'll grab the next one. One of the things that really came out of nowhere for me, it surprised me a lot, was actually a DLC for a game. One of my favorite all-time games is Outer Wilds. I still stand by that base game is just one of the greatest games ever made. And they were coming out with a DLC for it several years later. And it's called Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye. And it is not as good as Outer Wilds. And I know that seems weird to say this is one of the greatest games of 2021, and it is not as good as the base game, but that base game is a really, really high bar to beat.
I was gonna
And
say, yeah, not as good as Outer Wilds as most things aren't.
right? Yeah, most games are not. In fact, I'm so sorry, 2021, but none of these games on my list are as good as Outer Wilds. But Echoes of the Eye is still really, really fantastic. It has some problems. It is the thing I would thing about Outer Wilds that I always hear, and thing that prevents people from playing it, is that it has like a timer. It will restart every 22 minutes. And I know some people are like, oh, I hate timers. I'm that way. I hate timers. If I hear a game has a timer, I will be upset by that. I won't buy it. Fortunately, I went into Outer Wilds not knowing it had that. So good times. But I cannot stress enough that that game is still very worth playing, even if you don't like timers, because it's not, it just, the way the game is designed, the timer does not get in your way. Echoes of the Eye is not that way. Echoes of the Eye will make you very frustrated by that timer. And that is a bummer for me. But the mystery of it is still so good. The storyline is so great. I found the stealth elements and horror elements fun. Some people I know have not liked that stuff, but honestly, you can turn it off. It's a setting where you can just turn off that whole section of the game if you don't like it. So, if you have played through Outer Wilds and you just want more of that and are okay with the fact that the timer is now going to be obnoxious, it's not overbearing, but it's more obnoxious this time around. Echoes of the Eye is still one of the best games of 2021.
Honestly, I never even, I mean, not never, because obviously it is a timer, but when I was playing Outer Wilds, the timer didn't even register to me so much as a timer as it did just like a roguelike loop, basically. Like, because that's more, you know, when I think of why I hate timers, I think of like Pikmin or Dead Rising, which are both like good games, but I'm constantly just stressed out about like, oh no, I can't do literally anything because I need to do this. It's the only thing I have time to do, even if I end up having plenty of time. And man, it's just not like that, you know. It's just a matter of the timer's really just a matter of like limiting and then sort of structuring the core loop, and it's just really good.
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine ask me the other day. He was like, "Can I mod out the timer? Like if I buy it on PC, is there a mod to remove it?" And I had to stop and think about that. So I'm like, no, like it's so hard to talk about because you can't really describe why it's not going to be a problem without spoiling the game. But I'm like,
I feel like it'd be similar to like adding an infinite health cheat to Hades or something. Like, sure, if you modded it to do that, I guess you could, but also the point of the game is to keep going back and you know, like that would ruin the core design so much.
Yeah, I mean, even more than I think an infinite health glitch, like it would destroy the game. Like I think it would be more frustrating playing it without the timer than it would be to play with the timer.
Oh yeah.
You'd get like stuck in certain areas and just have to die, I guess, to go back. It would just be obnoxious. But yeah, anyway, Echoes of the Eye definitely has more of the times where it's restarting and you wish that you kind of weren't in a place where you wanted to restart. And you kind of have to just go back to that location. And it's just kind of the nature of that DLC because it always takes place in one spot. It just becomes more of a nuisance. It's still, even as somebody who hates in-game timers, it still wasn't enough to ruin that game for me by any stretch. So.
That's great.
All right, well, I guess I'm next then. I'll go with one of the ones that I actually finished, and you know, out of these, probably my runner-up. I guess we'll see when I finish one of the other ones. But Returnal came out this year, and man, I know that it's unfortunately difficult to recommend to people because it's a PS5 exclusive.
I know you're the only one of us that has a PS5, I think.
Yeah, am I? Okay, man. Yeah, they're so hard to. I got so lucky getting mine. And you know, not everyone can get lucky like that. It's really good. Like it's hard to describe exactly why. So much of it comes down to game feel, I feel like.
Hmm.
There's a great core mystery. Like, essentially, you're just playing as a woman who's crash landed on an alien planet and is trying to follow some kind of mysterious signal in hopes that it will allow her to radio, who she needs to get off world again. And it is a roguelike, uh, with actually uh, very few elements that remain the same over the course of each run. Um, Essentially, as you go, there are certain like shortcuts that you can unlock that stay the same, but for the most part, you are just starting from the beginning with no extra upgrades or anything like that. And there is a lot of it. Like, it takes advantage of the PS5's hardware extremely well. It's a gorgeous game. The atmosphere of like the designs of the different areas and such is really incredible. The main character is very relatable. Like, you can really just feel the fatigue each time she loops and stuff. But so much of it is just how well the game handles. It's a third-person shooter with, like, I guess bullet hell elements to it. Like, the best boss in the game, without question, is one that essentially has a bunch of projectiles coming out of an organ as the organ is being played, and this, like, creepy dramatic music is happening. And just, all of these projectiles are coming at you, and you need to be shooting at this thing while also dodging them and such. And it's hard. It's so hard to describe how good the game feels and how just really smooth and enjoyable it is to play. There was another accessibility issue that made it hard to recommend when it first came out, which was that it would not allow you to save during a run. If you were in the middle of doing a run of this game and then went to play a different game or turned off your PlayStation or whatever, then you'd have to start all over again. It would not save your progress on that. And these runs in this game can take hours. They're pretty long. So that was something of a problem, but they have since introduced a patch that does allow you to do that. So that obstacle is removed, and honestly, the only obstacle in the way still is at the PS5. And if anyone does have that, I really, really do recommend this game. Also, I forget if I had the PS5 when we recorded this last time, because I got it like in January, I think.
I remember your Twitter odyssey trying to get a PS5, and it sounded like a heck of a thing. Yeah, you said earlier you got lucky, and I was like, I don't know about that.
It was 3:00 in the morning, and I saw one of the Twitter accounts that I followed say that there were some on Amazon. I shouldn't have been awake at 3:00 in the morning, but I was, and I saw that as soon as it went up, and I got it. So lucky me.
Nice.
But anyway, I forget if I had gotten it, I would have already ranted about this last time. But the controller for the PlayStation 5 is so cool. The haptic feedback, it's just talking about things that are hard to describe without like experiencing them. Like, when everyone was trying to say what that was, I was like, it's just rumbles, right? How could that? But no, like, when you're playing Returnal and it's raining, you feel little pricks on the controller, like little pricks of rumbling or whatever that, like, it sort of feels like rain on your hands. Certain movements and sounds and stuff make these just really subtle and rippling motions, and it's so cool. It is hard to overstate how cool the PS5 controller is. And Returnal uses it really well too. So yeah, just excellent roguelike, really great atmosphere, interesting narrative stuff going on that I can't talk about too much because kind of like Outer Wilds talking about the story at all sort of spoils it. But yeah, just really good. Anyone who's actually managed to get a PS5, I can't recommend it highly enough. Real good stuff.
I think before the Switch, I wouldn't have really had any idea what you were talking about with the haptic feedback. And I'm not saying it's the same thing with the DualSense, but right. I do remember at least the first time seeing the HD Rumble in action and being like, oh, wow, okay, this does make a really big difference.
Yeah, it's always surprising. It feels, honestly, it's always kind of weirded me out that Rumble took off as much as it did in the first place, because it feels kind of gimmicky, like in a vacuum. Yeah. But man, they just, game makers figured out how to use it in ways that enhance the experience, and so it caught on, and the haptic feedback is just really neat.
Yeah, Returnal was the game that made me really miss not having, let alone a PlayStation 5, but a PlayStation console at all. There's a lot of PlayStation exclusives that I've missed out on, but yeah, I think that, the elements of, well, first of all, how do you launch a game like that where or a roguelike that's 2 hours long for each run doesn't have a save feature? Like, I don't understand how. I understand the creative vision, whatever, but like, that is how had any of them not gotten frustrated by the fact that they lost a run? I don't understand. But you know, barring that, when I was looking at all the gameplay, I was like, man, this is a game for me. Just the way that it's structured and how visually stunning it is. And I mean, you were just describing the controller. That's one of those things that everybody's like, yeah, I can't describe it. It's just great. And I'm like, I want to know what that means. I want to know what it feels. I literally have no idea what the heck people are talking about when they're like, oh, it's just trust me, it's great. I'm like, so I don't know. That's one of those experiences.
The PS5 does come. The PS5 does come with a little platformer, Sony themed platformer called Astro's Playroom, and it's pretty much made like it's a cute, like it's legitimately it's a cute little platformer on its own, but it's also made to show off the controller. So whenever you pick one up, you can just try that and feel it all, and it's so cool.
Looking forward to 5 years from now when those come to PC and I can just pick up a DualSense and plug it in there. No, I'll probably get a PS5 at some point before that. Well, I mean, we'll see about stocking issues, but hopefully we won't have a chip shortage going 5 years from now.
Yeah, here's hoping.
So I still need a new PC.
Yeah. We just talked about 2 time loop games in a row, so I may as well just, keep that one going. Hey, I played an indie game last year, I suppose, called The Forgotten City, which is it's a game that started as a Skyrim mod. It was a kind of a fan project, and it ended up being extremely popular mod. Like hundreds of thousands of people, or I don't know how many, but a lot of people downloaded this mod. And it was so popular, it's like, okay, let's throw it into Unreal or whatever it was that he used and turn it into a proper standalone game. The concept is very fun. The whole idea is that you, the player from modern times, are kind of plopped into an ancient Roman city that is very small and has, 20 inhabitants, 30 inhabitants, something like that. And they are all governed by what is called the Golden Rule. And the Golden Rule is very simple. It's if one person commits a sin, and the concept of a sin is kind of up to interpretation for a lot of these people, but, if you murder someone or whatever, then everybody is going to be punished for it, not just the person who did it. And so they are all governed under this idea that, hey, we all have to behave and be nice and do good things because otherwise we're all going to, be punished in some way. And you eventually figure out that the reason why you're in this town is because somebody's about to break the Golden Rule and you need to figure out who it's going to be. And, that's the game kind of ravels from there. And there's this there's this looping mechanic where you go back to when you entered into the city once again, and you're talking to all these people as if to them it's the first time that you're talking to them, but to you, you're like, hey, we've already had this conversation, and they're like, what? So you can there's a lot of fun interactions that they built into that. And once again, when you have a time loop game, or you guys were talking about time restricted games where you have a certain amount of time, and if you hear about that, you're like, I don't know, that's kind of a negative thing. I have the same thing when it comes to Groundhog Day style time loops. Like, if you're gonna tell me you're gonna have to do the same thing over and over again, I'm gonna be like, you okay, oh sure. And it turns out that this guy, really pulled it off. There's a lot of mechanics that he puts into the game to make sure that it's manageable and palatable and even enjoying in many cases to go back through the loop. And lots of different things to uncover, lots of mysteries and stories and meeting all the different people. And this is very much a game about talking to people and unraveling a story. And I think it's done very, very well. I don't know, Kato, you had some, you played it because I convinced you to play it and because I knew you would love it. And I don't know, you did have some criticisms about it that I think I didn't have as much, but.
Oh, I mean, it's still an absolute, one of the best games of the year. I don't begrudge you putting it on your list at all. Yeah, it's very janky.
It is, yes.
It does feel like a Skyrim mod. I
was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, but it's so much more than an Outer Wilds clone, which was what I thought when I read the description and when I started playing it. I thought like, oh, it's just gonna be like Outer Wilds, which frankly I was like, yeah, that's fine. It's just more Outer Wilds. It's great. But it does some really fascinating things with that loop mechanic, and the game responds to you in ways you would not expect it to know to do. and I know that's vague, but like play around with the looping mechanic because they do a great job of having it react to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to love about this game. I don't know. I would definitely recommend it for anybody who especially is like maybe not a huge gamer. Like I gave it to my partner who struggles with, various controls and playing games in general. And, I just said, hey, this is a game that's all about like a really good story. And as long as you're into, as long as you can move around and look around even at your own pace, then you'll probably be fine. There is a segment of the game that is like, hey, you're about to enter like a scary part and a part that has a lot of action. You don't have to do it. It's totally like, just feel free to just skip it. They give you a little tool tip to say that. So, you can skip
and
that.
I recommend doing that. Yeah. Just skip that part. It was not fun.
Hey, I liked it narratively.
I know.
Some of the action bits were a little hard to get through, but that was the janky bit. But anyway, if you
have that game, I just need to play it.
Highly recommend it.
Actually, Sam, as somebody who is interested in like theology and arguments related to that, you should absolutely play that game.
Okay.
Yeah, it deals a lot because, like you said, the rule is just, you cannot sin, and nobody quite knows what that means. So it goes places with that.
Yeah, when Kato and I were talking about the game, he was like, I don't know that I agreed with this and that. And I was like, man, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just like, ooh, cool, time loops. Like I'm like so not that person, right? So anyway,
I didn't disagree with it, but that's part of the fun, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't need to agree with it to love it and respect it.
Yeah.
But hey, that's the Forgotten City. You should check it out.
Yeah. So I know one of the top games we had on our list, I think Sam, you agreed with me on this one, was Resident Evil Village.
Yeah.
Which, oh man, I actually just discovered the kind of modern Resident Evils this year. Resident Evil 7 is one of my top non-2021 games.
Yeah.
And so I got to play that and then play Village like right after. I was playing 7 to get ready for Village. As a fan of classic Resident Evil, Code Veronica was my favorite, Resident Evil prior to this. I'm one of the few people who doesn't list Resident Evil 4 as the best one. I love going into the modern ones. The modern ones are so good. And even if you've never played a Resident Evil before, I highly recommend either 7 or 8. They're both just fantastic. But Village is bringing a lot of those mechanics from 4 into modern Resident Evil, letting you buy stuff at the shop, collect things, actually incorporating side quests and things into that game is just incredible, and it never stopped being scary. I wouldn't say it was ever as scary as 7 was, but like one of my problems with Resident Evil 4 was I was never scared by that game. Village was oppressive. It was like the setting, the atmosphere is it's tough. And one element, I know everybody always says this, but there is one section of the game that is legitimately terrifying.
Yep.
I in particular hate creepy dolls, and so that was fun. That was great.
See, that's really interesting because if you don't mind me piggybacking off this, since it's also in my list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I agree with a lot. Like, it's a fantastic game. I actually felt like, for the most part, it wasn't all that scary.
Really?
Except for that one scene. That scene is one of the most terrifying things I've ever experienced. It freaked me out so much. I was not okay. And the rest of the game was a lot more actiony and not so scary for me, which was also fine. Like, it wasn't not scary in an obnoxious way. Like, I know I'm in a minority on this, but Dead Space it always felt like it was trying to scare me and doing a really bad job at it, and that annoyed me.
Dead Space.
But Village just felt for the most part like it was trying to be themed around scary things, but not actually trying that hard to try. Like, I don't know. It felt like a lot of it was more scary themed than actual scary for me, which is a lot of why I think 7 might still be my favorite of the two. But
I think it's mine too. Yeah.
Yeah. But man, it is just really like it does what it sets out to do extremely well, and it's just a lot of fun, and I am still not over that one scary part. So,
No kidding.
Yeah.
So it is more, I guess, for the atmosphere of the thing. It's a game that I'd probably recommend to people who say they don't like horror games, because you're right. It's not like, this is not Amnesia. This is not Resident Evil 7. It's not that kind of scary. But trying to go through Lady Dimitrescu's castle and get through knowing that she's stalking you around, it going back into the main kind of hub area where things are changing and new things are attacking you, I never felt safe. I think that was the thing in Resident Evil 4 where I felt like, okay, I've taken out the enemies, I'm now good. And I felt that way through the whole game. Don't get me wrong, Resident Evil 4 is still a great game. It's just I didn't have the love for it that a lot of people do. This one always felt like something could be popping up and attacking me at any moment. I think that's just what I liked. You're right. It is super not as scary as 7 was at, I think, any point. But it was still just so much fun to play. I think I just really loved the game.
It was really, really good for sure. And I think that's, at least so far, I hadn't really played any Resident Evil games until I played 7 and then played the 2 and 3 remakes before Village. And like one of my favorite things about in the entire series was actually Mr. X and Resident Evil 2, because as soon as he showed up, it was what you were talking about, that feeling of like never being safe, always having to listen for that stomp, 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 and knowing that if I'm trying to go somewhere and he's in the way, I need to figure something else out, because, like that feeling of always being stalked is something that Resident Evil does well when it does it. So, that played into 8's favor. For sure.
Just total tangent here. That first time Mr. X comes out in Resident Evil 2, the remake, I didn't understand what was happening. I'd never played the original Resident Evil 2 till afterwards. And
Same.
I just sat there and watched him and was like, oh, cool. He just like broke through that. And yeah. Oh, he's coming this way. Okay. Wait, should I move or something? Like, I don't know. Should I leave? Got
as Resident Evil, man, if you see a thing and you don't know what it is, you run. You shoot it or run, one way or the other. Like, do something.
I think something in my brain was telling me this was a cutscene and that I wasn't supposed to move. And I mean, it's not. I had no reason to think that.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting here staring as he just walks forward and kills me.
Would have done you better in Resident Evil 3, because, man, Nemesis was so much more scripted than Mr. X was.
That's such a bummer. I mean, Nemesis was always the good one in the classic ones. Mr. X was kind of like, this throwaway character that...
Yeah, I don't know. I've still only played, like, the 2 and 3 remakes. I haven't played the originals, but, like, coming off of Mr. X, like, stalking me, having Nemesis pretty much just show up to chase me for a bit and then leave was disappointing, but...
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely heard that. It's a bummer. I don't know. I'm hoping they do a Code Veronica remake. I want a Code Veronica remake.
Yeah, I'll need to play that one. Do I get one, or does my participation in that one count as mine?
No, go. Yeah, do yours. You're good.
Sure. Okay. I'll talk about one of the other ones that I haven't that I did actually finish this year, Metroid Dread. You know what? Honestly, it's kind of a weird one because it was one of my favorite games of this year. I also didn't play a whole lot of games this year, but it's not my favorite Metroid game. Like,
what's your favorite Metroid game?
Oh gosh. Well, when you ask me that now, that's a hard question to answer. Probably Fusion. Probably Fusion. Admittedly, I still haven't played Samus Returns. I need to get on that, but probably Fusion.
It's like $100 now.
Yeah, seriously. Someday, I'm sure. Dread sort of tended to like succeed or not for people who played it, depending on whether they liked the Emmy segments, because there were these robots that, like, whenever you're in their area, they can come and chase you, and if they catch you, you have an opportunity to try and get out, but it is very, very, like, the odds are stacked against you. You have to, like, time a button press in the right way, and it is extremely difficult to actually do, and somewhat up to chance, kind of. It's weird. Like, it's not an insta-fail, but it's pretty much, it's rare that you're going to get out of it. And some people liked that. Some people didn't. I'm on the didn't camp. I like it in concept, except that, again, having played Fusion, I've been stalked by something in a Metroid game that is way scarier than a weird robot. Like, these robots aren't scary. They're just powerful. So, like, it didn't have quite the same weird like uncanny valley element to it that the X Parasite did in Fusion. It's just a robot that'll kill you if you do things wrong. So there's not so much like there's that element of frustration without the element of like fear and interest to really make it work, in my opinion. So I wasn't a big fan of that, but I also wasn't one of the people who thought that ruined it. Everything else in Metroid Dread was pretty friggin' fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It's always weird going, to things like Metroid and Castlevania when the genres that they've established have been done so well since then by other games. Like Metroid Dread is not a Hollow Knight. It's very hard for another side-scrolling Metroidvania game to measure up to Hollow Knight. That's just kind of the gold standard now. But it's also, it's not trying to be. It's still Metroid. That is its own thing, and it does a good job at what it does, even if I'm not really a big fan of the Emmy segments. I appreciated them trying to add a bit of characterization to Samus without, fully going all in on it, I guess. I would like to see another attempt to actually, like, characterize Samus in depth, just doing it not horribly like Other M did.
Other M, that's it. I was thinking Zero Mission. I'm like, that's not right. That's not the one.
Yeah, no. That game was so bad, but I feel like you can sort of tell that they're trying to give Samus a little bit more characterization, but not actually go too far with it, which is kind of unfortunate because I think the lesson to learn from Other M isn't that you shouldn't characterize Samus deeply, it's that you should characterize Samus well instead of what Other M did. But, despite that, like, yeah, talking about some small complaints about what I wish Metroid Dread was isn't really, it doesn't take away from the fact that it is what it is, and what it is good. I enjoyed it a lot. So, it was just nice to have 2D Metroid back. I guess we got Samus Returns recently, and I just didn't play it, so that's partially on me. But still, it was good. I liked it.
I mean, I do think the narrative of this release was very much like, hey, this is 2D Metroid coming back in a world where Metroidvanias are more than Metroid and Castlevania, right? Like you mentioned, Hollow Knight exists now, Ori and the Blind Forest exists now. So if this is a game that is substantially worse than those, right, aren't as good, then they're not living up to the genre that they've been named after, right? And
right.
I think I think the general consensus has been, as somebody who hasn't played it, but from what I've seen of people who have played it, is hey, it is a good Metroid entry. And okay, maybe it isn't Hollow Knight, maybe it isn't whatever, but it is at least a return to form.
Yeah, I'd say return to form is a pretty good way to put it. Yeah, I don't think it's the best Metroid game or the best game of its genre, but it doesn't have to be. It's just got to be a good Metroid game, and it is, despite some hiccups. It is. So yeah.
Every time I haven't gotten very far in it. I was hoping to finish it this last week and just didn't have time. But every time Adam talks to you at the beginning, the computer, and I'm just immediately thrown back to Other M, and I realized that Other M, just totally ruined that story for me. So honestly, I hope they just kind of like decanonize that whole game.
But... oh man, wouldn't that be nice? I feel like they're trying to ignore its existence, but yeah, I don't know. Having Adam back as a computer, maybe like a lot of the game gave me Fusion vibes anyway, so it kind of allowed me to ignore that Adam and just get back into into this one, into the Fusion one, when Adam was fine instead of just the worst.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll talk about...
Sorry, yeah, we don't have to talk about Other M right now. We can go. I'll just seethe in hatred over here.
I'll talk about one of the games I played this year, which was Inscription. Inscription is very interesting.
I need to play that. Sorry, go on.
Yes, you do.
No, you're good. You definitely do need to play that. It's a very good game. Inscription was interesting because I played this game on a whim during one of the Steam Next Fests when they do those demos. I was just scrolling through the list and I was like, oh, it's a card game roguelike, so I've put like 500 hours in Slay the Spire or something like that. I'll check out this demo. So I played it. I had no idea who the creator was. I find out later it's Daniel Mullins, maker of Pony Island. And I played it and I was like, man, this was so good. This is going to be one of those games that flies under the radar and nobody talks about. And then the game came out and that didn't happen. Everybody was talking about Inscription. Yeah. Inscription is, it very similar to Outer Wilds or Forgotten City. You have to be careful about how much you talk about it because it is, you say too much and you kind of reveal too much about, what that game really is. But Inscription is more than what they show on the box, right? I think that's safe to say. And
Safe to say about all of his games, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, that's just his MO.
Definitely.
certainly. And so, the demo is just what they show you on the box. They don't go farther in like they do in the game. And so I was really, really ready for the whole game to be the demo that I played, right? And then it ended up being a lot more than that. And a lot more than that was incredibly creative. It was very, very fun. Inscription is on a lot of Game of the Year lists for a reason, and it's certainly one of the most unique games to have come out last year. Afterwards, he ended up releasing like this he called it Casey's mod, but it's essentially like a beta branch on the Steam version of the game, where he was like, "Hey, all of you have been asking for the first part of the game, but like infinitely, so like here you go." And I haven't had the chance to really play it in the way that I wanted to, but that's it. That was the game I was looking for. But in any event, I mean, yeah, like Kato, you can talk about what you felt about the rest of it, but certainly like they did a lot of stuff that came unexpectedly and was very interesting.
I like that we just share like our whole game.
I know,
list.
yeah,
It's it's true though. You tell me about a game, you talk about it on TGA Radio, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I have to get that game. This is the second of the 2 games you've talked about where I
Yeah.
have bought it immediately after we recorded our podcast. Yeah, and it was so good, and I've been watching videos online, and apparently a lot of the ARG stuff is actually baked into this game. And there were things I noticed while playing it that I thought was a clue for something, and then just kind of wrote off that is apparently a clue for this ARG. So, fun fact about Inscription, I don't think it's a spoiler to say there is a lot more under the hood, that even if you finish the entire game, there is still significantly more lore that you can find and delve into, and that has been really fascinating to watch, because I do not have time to like save images out of the files of the game and like increase the brightness to see images, and
Yeah,
I can see videos.
ARGs are one of those
that.
things that, for me at least, it's a lot more fun just to read about what everybody did as opposed to actively participating.
They're
Yeah.
so cool in concept. Like, if I had just
Right.
more time in my life, I would love to get involved. But as it is, no.
Yeah,
I
the
100% agree.
the thing I'll say about Inscription is, if you're somebody who looks at something like Slay the Spire or, deck building roguelikes in general, and you don't like that, then Inscription you could still enjoy, because it has a beginning, middle, and end. It's not, infinitely replayable, and unless obviously you do that beta branch that I was talking about. But I think there's a lot of people who played this game that don't usually like the genre, but really liked this game. I think it's fair to say you would have to like the idea of card games at least. That is most of the game. But anyway, that's Inscription. It's on a lot of lists for a reason. It's relatively short. It's like 10 hours or something like that. You can play through it in a couple of sittings, and yeah.
That's how I came into the game. I am not really a fan. I mean, Slay the Spire is great. I respect it, but it's not the kind of game I want to play a lot of. But I still loved Inscription. And actually now I really want escape room games. So my kind of last one on my list is one that I don't think is probably going to get a lot of Game of the Year nods, and that's fine, but it was very much the game that came out when I needed it to come out. And that is new Pokemon Snap. And this is a follow-up to the N64 Pokemon Snap, which for some reason hasn't gotten a sequel to now, but at the same time, I never thought would ever get a sequel. And they finally made one, and it was everything I hoped it would be. And it is just an expanded version of the N64 stuff. I mean, it's not the same content as the N64 one, but it just takes that formula and just hugely expands on it. Letting you do so many other things and so many new things. And this game came out very shortly after my wife and I had our first son, and he was we were going through a lot of difficulties adjusting to living as parents, and new Pokemon Snap was the like casual game that we could play together. It didn't take a lot of time. We could both kind of watch, and no matter who was playing, we could still like have a really good time with it. It is pretty. It actually has really gotten my wife into Pokemon. Now she's playing through Shining Pearl, and it's been a great gateway for that. It's just it's just fun. It's just casual and chill and fun. And I super needed that when it came out. I think a lot of other people have needed that in 2021 and with everything going on in the world. So if you just need something that's chill, that's happy, that's pleasant, and is just a good time, and new Pokemon Snap was great and had lots and lots of content. They just gave free DLC like a month after it came out that had
Oh, that's nice.
4 new levels in it. That
Nintendo's
was
been
crazy.
doing that.
I mean, the base game I think has 11. So
It's kind of weird. They did the same thing for Mario Golf, where and Mario
Yeah.
Party, or so, I think like they're just like dropping content with very little fanfare or they announce it. They say, hey, but they didn't announce it beforehand, and it leaves a lot of people being like, okay, they launched this game, it doesn't have a lot of content. Are we getting more, or is and it's just kind of like this weird. So I don't know what they're doing there, but
one of the things that really surprised me about that is, yeah, like absolutely, that's what they've been doing. But this is actually new Pokemon Snap was actually Bandai Namco. It was not done through in-house like by Nintendo. I don't know how involved Pokemon Company was. I'm not even sure if they developed it. I just know Bandai Namco was the producers of it. So I was expecting like a bunch of DLC, and just like a lot of their other games. But yeah, no, this pack that absolutely could have been paid DLC, and I super would have been happy if I'd paid $10 for it. Yeah, they just released for free as a free patch. So
that's pretty cool.
There's a lot of game there, which is great because the first Pokemon Snap was a really short experience. If that's what's prevented people from buying this new one, thinking that they're going to pay $60 for a game that they're going to finish in 2 hours, it's not that. Definitely not that. I think I've clocked about 40 hours and I still come back to it quite often.
that's awesome.
All right.
Do you have more on your list, Sam?
Yeah, I've got 2 more. Well, and one of them I know we share on our list, so I'll go ahead and just talk about Halo Infinite. This is another one that I haven't finished yet. I actually wanted to try and finish it before now and got in and then looked up, a list of the missions or whatever and found out that I am way further away from the end of this game than I thought. It is longer than I expected. And that's cool. Okay.
Is that cool? That can be a good or bad thing.
In this case, I'm pretty sure it's good, but
okay.
I guess we'll see as I go on. The thing is, I'm one of those. I don't hate open world games. Like I loved why am I forgetting the name? The samurai one, not Sekiro though.
Ghost of Tsushima.
Ghost of Tsushima. Yeah, I really liked that game, and it was very sort of traditional open world, though with I think I even talked about it last year, but with some twists that I think made it unique, and of course it was absolutely gorgeous. I really liked it, but as a general rule, I'm getting so tired of open world games. I don't know. I've done the Assassin's Creed Far Cry thing so many times, and I like those games too, but I'm just so tired of that, and every game feeling like that. And so when I heard Halo was going open world, especially since the strength of I really love Halo, so there are a lot of strengths of the series, but one of them, in my opinion, has been its level design and its linear. When you take away linearity, it's a lot more difficult to create particularly interesting and the devs have a lot more control over the exact pacing of a certain encounter and stuff like that when it's not just an area that you can come at from anywhere and do whatever with. I was not really sure about that change. I was really skeptical of it and unsure. Man, it works so well, though. I honestly could not possibly have expected that it would work as well as it did. I have been doing everything in this game, and that takes a special open world game for me to just legit go onto the map, pin a point, go do a thing, then go back, pin the next point. That's not a thing I do. But I have been enjoying this game a whole lot, and there were elements of the story at first that were a little off-putting to me. I think just as a result of the fact that they're trying to leave Halo 5 behind them, so it doesn't really tie directly into it. It sort of starts in medias res with some other important events having happened off screen that I needed to sort of catch up on, and that can annoy me. That annoyed the heck out of me in Doom Eternal. I just was lost that entire time. And it does kind of annoy me here still, but once I got over that, especially since Halo 5 was garbage, and I'm okay with them sort of leaving that in the dust. The story content of this game is enjoyable so far. there's a pilot voiced by, I forget his name, but he also voices Octane in Apex Legends, and he's a great character. I enjoy him. There's like a new Cortana sort of that's Cortana but different in a very like sort of interesting and cute way. I don't know. I'm enjoying it so far, and so that's cool. But honestly, I just did not expect open world to work as well with Halo as it does. But man, I missed Halo gunplay. I missed it so much. It feels like classic Halo again, and it's just very good. And of course, the multiplayer too is fantastic. I've been enjoying that as well. It's just very good. So yeah, it's on your list too. What?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm really happy to hear that. I haven't been playing the single player at all, and I do intend to, but Halo for me has always been like there but not there in my life, because I played Halo when I was young. I played a lot of Halo 1 and 2 local split screen. I played the Halo 3 campaign extensively as a child.
Mhm.
But then as I got into like the teenage years, it was Call of Duty. That was I played Modern Warfare 2 through to Black Ops 2, and that was my whole life.
Yeah.
And I didn't really touch Halo until after that. So all the opinions that people have about Halo Reach and 4 and 5 and everything that they've done, I never played those games because Halo wasn't like Halo to me. Call of Duty was my thing. Halo wasn't my thing.
Right.
However, Halo Infinite comes out. They have the multiplayer come out with the free to play. And I play the game, and there was an itch being scratched that I didn't know needed to be scratched. Something about the combination of them going back to a very classic Halo-style gameplay, from Halo 2, 3, whatever, and that being the game that I played as a kid was so incredibly satisfying. And, the multiplayer was just, it is such a refreshing thing now, where if I hear multiplayer shooter, like Call of Duty these days, or Apex, or any other battle royale game or whatever, I get skeptical, especially if it's free to play. Right? There's so much nonsense that goes on with that genre these days, and just for Halo to come in, and the biggest scandal is like people are upset about how fast they're progressing through the progression system, which is all cosmetic. Like that you have something, right? If that's the issue.
Yeah.
And so I've been having a heck of a time with the multiplayer, and I live with my best friend of my whole life since I was 2 years old. He was the one I was playing Halo with as a kid. Now we're roommates, and we're playing Halo like it's the old days, like this is pretty high on my list just because of my own personal experiences, but also because the game's really good.
Yeah.
Hearing that it drops Halo 5 actually makes me more likely to play it. So thanks for that.
Yeah, basically, like it doesn't retcon it necessarily, but it pretty much like resolves it off screen and just moves on from there.
I'm very okay with that.
Yeah, I'm here for that. And yeah, man, there's something, because like I played Call of Duty also when that got big and popular, but the entire industry moved toward that sort of like slower pacing but faster time to kill, emphasis on iron sights for aiming, like all of that stuff became basically baked into the entire genre, and that's fine. There are a lot of games like that I enjoy. Destiny has some of the best gunplay I've ever played, and it at least does the iron sight, like it feels a little more Call of Duty-ish than Halo, in some ways. But man, like I've really missed just the sort of Halo just feels a lot more just quick and precise to me when you can, you can zoom in, but it's not iron sights. It's not, do that so that you can be accurate. It's just, if you need to be, see further away or whatever, you're shooting from the hip pretty much the whole time. And it's so fast, nice. And I've forgotten how much I love having grenades just mapped to a trigger so that you can just chuck them whenever. Like, man, it's just such a winning formula for first person shooter gameplay and arena shooters and such that it's so weird that Halo was like on top of the entire world, and then Call of Duty completely supplanted it the next generation, and we just lost that whole genre of first person shooter. It feels like it's so nice to have it back. So yeah, I've been enjoying it.
I'm also very happy that they took a year off. Right? They delayed the game by a full year. Obviously, they wanted this game out to coincide with the launch of the Series X, but the fact that they, released that trailer that everybody was upset about, I wasn't paying attention very much, but, they did that, and then they were like, you know what, we could just make this game better, and so they took a year off, off of this major console launch, and then they released it, and now it's, like, absolutely phenomenal game. Like, I don't know what it would have looked like the year before, but I'm so glad that they did that, because I think, or at least I imagine it paid dividends for them.
Yeah. Yeah,
was
honestly,
incredibly brave.
it's the first time since Bungie that I've like really, because like 4 had some good points to it, 5 is obviously just mostly not good, but it's the first time since Bungie was making them that I felt like the only thing I feel is missing now is a Martin O'Donnell score. That's the only thing that
Yeah.
as I'm playing, I'm like, well, that's not there. That would have been nice, but everything else, it just feels like Halo again, and I am happy with it.
It'll just play in my head anyway. I'll just
Yeah,
have
I mean,
that score
it's all
going
clearly
anyway.
this. I mean, like it's the same basic aesthetics, and they have a lot of the motifs of the music before and stuff. It's just it's the same when you watch a Star Wars movie that isn't scored by John Williams. The Star Wars music is there, but the rest of it, isn't as immediately iconic as you'd expect. That's just how it goes. But
Hey, that's fair. So does everyone still jump around all the time? Is that still a thing in Halo Infinite? Jump combat, jump shooting.
oftentimes, not all the time, but often, yes.
Jump
See,
and throw
I
grenades.
missed that. Everyone, I feel like when Call of Duty was starting to become big, people were like, "Oh, jumping around in Halo is ridiculous." I'm like, but it's so fun.
Yeah.
I like the floaty jumps.
Mm-hmm. Man, that is another thing that I missed so much. I got so tired of games being like, all right, hit the jump button and you're just going to go boop. Like,
yeah, it's like, why even
I
bother
like
having
jumping.
that here? I
I
don't know. I didn't need it in Gears of War, but I need it in my Halo.
Yeah.
If it didn't have the jumping constantly thing, then it just
That's
wouldn't
the thing,
be Halo
like,
for me.
If you don't need jumping, then sure. Like, Gears of War wasn't a game that needed jumping, so it was fun.
No.
If it had a jump button and it was like nothing, that would have been annoying. But
Okay, well, I'll finish off my Game of the Year list here with the 2 games I have left, because I'll talk about them quite quickly. Because I didn't really play them to their fullest extent. I mean, Halo, even, I've put like 15 hours into the multiplayer. Like, that's not really a game I played a ton. But yeah, I'll talk about Loop Hero, which is an indie roguelike. Very interesting game. It's this idea that they put you on this procedurally generated loop, and your little hero goes around the loop. And if you just let them loop infinitely, then they'll just, fight monsters every now and then and basically do nothing, and then you can leave when you want, and nothing happens. That could be the game. Or, you could do what the game wants you to do, which is build the game around the character going in the loop. And so you create the monsters that they fight, you create the environment which provides the resources for them. And when I saw that, I was like, I don't get it. Like, it doesn't, like, what are we doing here? Why am I doing this? And what it turns out to be is a really interesting balancing act of how strong am I and what can I take on, right? So you can put like a little skeleton farm in there and you fight the skeleton, but you lose some health. And so you gotta, hopefully replenish your health by the time you loop around. But if you put skeleton, vampire, scarecrow, flies, mosquitoes, whatever, you just do a whole row of enemies, you're just gonna die, and then you don't get the resources that you collected. And so, enemies get stronger as you loop, you get stronger as you loop, and it's just trying to find the cadence of the game of what can I take on, and you're the one in control of that, right? You can demolish things every now and then and be like, oh, okay, I'm just going to get absolutely wiped if I go on this loop, so I'll just destroy this thing that I gave myself too much of a challenge. Let's just reduce the challenge a little bit, and then, that's actually a successful strategy. So I ended up not getting too far into the game because I felt like the overarching progression of the game, where it's like, okay, you do the loop, and then you go back into the overworld, and you like build up your camp and you unlock new interesting things. Like, it was neat, but there wasn't enough there for me to really like hang on to. So, I think I put 10 hours in the game or something like that. And that's really a game that you need to put a lot of time into. But, if you're into roguelikes, it had a very unique concept that I think is worth trying out. Like, I'm glad that I purchased it and played it.
That is really cool. I had no idea that's what Loop Hero was, and that sounds really neat. I'll have to try that.
It's very unique.
I think it's on Switch now, right?
I believe
we
so.
were talking about it releasing soon. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Pick that up too.
With a controller, I would imagine it's a little more clunky because there's a lot. Like, it's a grid system, so you would have to, using a mouse or a touchscreen, I feel like would be a lot better. Which I know the Switch has, so it might be better with the touchscreen. But I don't know. I feel like it might be a little clunky with a controller. But you say that all the time, and then they release the console port, and it works great. So what do I know?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the touchscreen works for it, then I'd be fine.
Yeah.
I have some styli for the Switch for Mario Maker, so
there you go.
It's doable. It works.
And then the other game I'll mention really quickly is It Takes Two. This is the follow up from the people who made A Way Out. It's a co-op only game, so if you purchase the game, You get a little friend pass, and you can give it to your friend, and they get to play the game with you for free, essentially. There's no AI or anything like that. You have to play it with a friend. And so I've played A Way Out, and if you've played A Way Out, I would imagine you agree with me when you say, like, you enjoy that game because you're playing that game with someone, not because the game is a great game. Like,
Not be a good single player game, no.
Yeah.
it does some good stuff. You know, the mini games are fun. It's the plot is passable, whatever. But, you know, for the most part, my full enjoyment from A Way Out came from the fact that I'm like screwing around with my friend trying to escape a prison and run from the police and everything. I think that It Takes Two is a genuinely great game. Any of the complaints that I had with A Way Out were just totally mitigated with this game. The characters are so on point. There's one character in particular which is just hilarious. The story is very touching. We haven't, again, and this is at the end of my list because we haven't gotten through the game it's quite a long game as well. I think A Way Out I finished again in 1 or 2 sessions. This one's going to take us quite a bit. But yeah, I'm having a ton of fun with it. I think the heart of having the mini games around is still very much there and still the best part of the game for me. You know, you're going through the game and then they're like, hey, you got to play like whack-a-mole, and you just sit there for an hour competing. In my case, competing with my partner with whack-a-mole. So anyway, yeah, I highly encourage people to check out It Takes Two if you have somebody to play it with, because it's really great.
One of my top wish listed games. I really wanted to play it this
Same,
year,
actually.
and just haven't had time.
I have it, but I just, you know, since I got my partner into Final Fantasy 14, I gotta drag us both off of that game so we can play It Takes Two instead.
Yeah, we're gonna be moving soon. We're like totally going away, and I'm losing my console and everything. And It Takes Two does not have cross progression, and so we're moving to a laptop, and we're like gonna be crunching on gameplay so that we can finish this game before we leave, because we're not doing everything that we've already done again. But so yeah, literally after this recording, I'm like going off to play It Takes Two, because now it's like we're playing every single night until we get this game done so that we can say that we finished it. But yeah, it's a great game.
I'm really curious, to hear what you think after you finish it, because I know from his previous games, A Way Out and then Brothers, the ending I think are the most memorable parts of both of those games. So I'm really curious to know if It Takes Two, which was a legitimately great game throughout, if it also has like just a super memorable ending.
We'll have to see. Kato, do you have more on your list?
No, I'm good.
Are we
I mean, I could just talk about other things I love in 2021, but
I've got one more.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Admittedly, it's kind of more of a runner-up because it is probably my least favorite of the ones that I've mentioned, but Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart was really good. I guess I would be the only one here who has it on my list because of the PS5 thing, but
I want to play it so badly.
Yeah, like, it's one of those games where, at least in my mind, most of the things that are good about it are just good and solid as opposed to exceptional necessarily, and that is admittedly coming from someone who has played like almost zero Ratchet and Clank. I really need to, like, I have the trilogy on PS3, I need to play through that, but I've played a little bit of the, like, what was it, 2016 or whatever, like, sort of reimagining of the first one, a little bit of that. I have been wanting to go back to that, but when Rift Apart came out and was as just beautiful as it is, like, man, and it really is, like, true to the PS5's hardware, the thing looks like it may as well be a Pixar movie, and you pretty much have, like, no load times or anything. It just jumps right in from one thing to the other. It is like you're playing a CG animated movie, pretty much, and it's really cool. The presentation's great, the story's great, I enjoyed the characters, the gameplay is fantastic, it's all smooth. Like, it's one of those games where it didn't do anything that blew my mind, it just did all the stuff that it did very, very well, and it was very fun and enjoyable and cute, and I liked it a lot. So, it didn't blow me away as much as some of the other games on my list, but it's just really solid, and I enjoyed it. So there's that one too.
Those new games are such an evolution of that franchise. I'm actually really curious if you're going to be able to go back and play the original trilogy.
Yeah,
it's
I don't know, but
real dated after playing 2016 and Rift Apart.
I'm sure, but I do love, like, honestly, there's something about, like, the PS2 action platformers like that and Sly Cooper and Jak and Daxter, like, there's just nothing that really feels like them anymore. You can get games that sort of do. I appreciated Recore for that, at least until the second half was just... But it's rare to get games that still feel like that. So I guess I'll see, but I tend to really enjoy those games with all of their sort of jank and dated design and all. And I think that's also part of why I like Rift Apart is, it doesn't feel old at all, but it feels classic in a sense in terms of, that sort of heyday of 3D platforming on the PS2 and such.
It's time for that genre to make a comeback. Kenna,
yeah.
that's what Kenna was.
I was going to mention
that. I'd forgotten about that one. I did start playing that. I need to get back to that. But
I found it interesting that you said that Ratchet and Clank was that CGI to life, because I feel like the conversation for that particular was Kenna, right? Like you saw, the studio literally was that before they made a video game, but you look at the gameplay for Kenna and it's just like, it just looks like you're playing a Pixar movie.
Yeah, and that is one that I really need to get to because it also does have that same visual appeal. Yeah. I'm not really a huge fan of some games. Souls-like combat doesn't feel like it belongs, and Kenna is one of those. It feels really out of place to me, but there's a lot of other stuff I do really like about the game, so I need to get back to that.
I don't think I knew it had Souls-like combat.
It feels, it's one of those where looking at it, you wouldn't necessarily realize visually, but when you play it, you're like, what does this feel like? This feels more like Souls than others.
That's
like
very weird.
Yeah, there's some, heck, even like Jedi Fallen Order, I didn't feel like Souls-like combat. I enjoyed it fine, but I don't know. Souls-like combat makes sense when you're a knight with heavy metal armor all over you trying to heft a giant sword. It doesn't feel lightsabers are weightless. Like, what do you do?
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. Kina's just kind of similar. It doesn't the combat feels a little out of place. It's fine. It's not bad. It just it doesn't super work for me, but a lot of other stuff about it's really great. So I need to finish that too. There's another good one I got to do for this year.
Okay, great. Well, hey, with 45 minutes ish left in the show here, let's transition to the games that we wished we could have played that came out last year, and we just never got a chance to get our hands on it. I think it's fair to say we could just monologue here about all of the games on our list. We don't have to go super in depth on all of them. And I'll just feel free to start here. There's a few games that came out that I wish I could have played, but I definitely couldn't have, in particular because of the PS5. Thinking about Ratchet and Clank, thinking about Returnal. PlayStation in general has always been that hang-up for me because I've never owned a PlayStation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the non-2021 games. But and basically anything PlayStation that comes out is a game that I wish I could have played. Just a fair statement to make. I really wish I would have played Deathloop this year. I chose not to because I chose not to because I don't want to spend the full AAA price for a video game these days. I'd rather buy like 4 indie games or whatever. And I know that Deathloop is going to head to the Game Pass at some point, which I am on. So, if I'm willing to wait for it, I'll just wait for it to come. But I really, really love Arcane Studios. I love what they did with Dishonored, especially. I did try to play Prey. Unfortunately, it didn't hook me in the way that it hooked a lot of people. But
oh man,
yeah, I know.
Love Prey.
I know.
Yeah, I could go on about Prey.
I really
talking about Metroidvanias here.
I know. I played it and I really wanted to love it. Like I turned all the lights off. I really tried to immerse myself into it, and I don't know what it was that I wasn't able to stick around. But yeah, even then I still had a great appreciation for Prey. So Deathloop is one of those games that was very high up there on the list, and I'm looking forward to playing it. Hitman 3. I love the Hitman series. It's probably one of my favorite games to play. Just, I'm like, I get giddy, ready to play some Hitman. And so I have Hitman 2 that I've been playing through. And actually, I've been playing the Hitman 1 levels through Hitman 2. I haven't actually played all that much of Hitman 2. And then now Hitman 3 has come out, and I'm able to move all that progress over. So I need to just do that at some point. But man, the open world sandbox of Hitman is something that is extremely enticing to me. As somebody who has also previously spent a lot of time getting all the achievements in various video games, and the fact that that's a game that you can go through and just find like the 50 different ways of murdering your target is extremely gratifying. So, I wish I had the chance to play through Hitman 3, but there's only so many games you can play through in a year. Little Nightmares 2 is an indie game that I really wanted to get around to before we started this show. I had a list of indie games to get through, and unfortunately, Little Nightmares, I didn't get it to it fast enough, but the first Little Nightmares is, I think, not like a super fan favorite. I think that it has its critics, but I really loved it. I thought the design was really, really well done. The character design, the cinematography, the music. Say what you will about the platforming. I think it was pretty standard, but I had a lot of fun with it. So when they said that they had a sequel coming out, I was all for it. And then finally,
I'd forgotten that happened. I really need to finish the first one so I can play the sequel, because I really liked what I played the first one.
I had to play the first one on a different platform that's not the Switch because the loading times were ridiculous on the Switch.
No, I bet.
It made it so frustrating.
And then the last thing I'll mention is the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. The only I didn't play it because this is like, hey, go play the 3 games that you've never played before, 60 hours plus long each of the game. Like it's just, I didn't play Little Nightmares 2. I'm not going to be playing Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Go ahead,
you should not be spending 60 hours in any of the Mass Effect games.
Okay,
I was going to say.
Fair. I just know they're long.
Way too long.
They're long, right?
As RPGs go, not really, but they are still RPGs, so it's fair.
Any game that's long,
they're long. Yeah.
Any game that's 10 hours is long for me. Like my attention span is
I think like 30 to 50 is sort of their range, but anyway, yeah, go on.
I've never played a Mass Effect before. I've tried to play the first one, and I was just too late to it. It felt just a little too old when I tried to play it.
It is very bad to play. I love Mass Effect 1, but it's No,
I love it. I will die on this hill. Mass Effect 1 is the best of all of them.
Oh, it's very good, just not to play.
I love playing it too.
Oh man.
So, I've never played them. I saw this came out. I thought, hey, this is my opportunity to get past that jank. So I will get to it at some point. It's now on the Game Pass, so I don't have to spend a bunch of money on it. And hey, that's me. Feel free to pick up on that, Kato.
Yeah. So one of my first ones is Shin Megami Tensei 5, and that's because I own it, and it's sitting over there taunting me right now. And I thought I was gonna get to play it for the show, and I just didn't. And I mean, I don't know when I'm gonna get to finish it. I'm sure that's a 100-hour RPG that'll take me well into 2023 and beyond. But I do really want to give that a try. I love the Persona series, and I've just dipped my toes into Shin Megami Tensei with 4. And I'm ready to see if 5, if that can keep it up. I know it's a very different game from 4, so I'm excited to see how that series has changed, considering it's always kind of thrived on its datedness. Anyway, Adrian, you said you chose not to play Deathloop because of other things, other games. I chose not to play Deathloop because if I tried running that on my PC, it would be like a 10 frames per second kind of deal. I decided I didn't want to play Deathloop as a slideshow. So when I get my new PC, that's top of my list. Deathloop looks great. I love the atmosphere. Honestly, I wasn't more excited about it leading up to its release, because I had kind of gotten it in my head that it was never going to release. It was just this game that Arcane talked about all the time, but it was never actually coming out. And then it did, and it's apparently amazing. So I need to play that.
I just want to do a quick anecdote here. I'm now realizing we've talked a lot about like looping games, time looping games.
Yeah,
Returnal, Outer Wilds, Forgotten City, 12 Minutes came out, which was, that was its own thing. I would say that was time loop, not very well done, but like it's interesting how that's the theme of the year.
We're not even done talking about those either. So
yeah, there's more.
This will be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like roguelikes have been as popular as they have been, and people have been incorporating that in other ways. And I mean, the most obvious way to incorporate a time loop or a roguelike into a story is time loop. So it kind of makes sense that that's starting to be a thing. I think it's only going to increase in popularity over time, and we're all going to get sick of it like 5 years from now. But right now, those games are incredible. So.
Yeah.
And then just really quick, I want to play It Takes Two. I just need to find time. My wife and I we both want to play it. It's just very rare we get to play games at the same time together. So, and then Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which I would have played if I had a PS5.
Yeah.
Go for it, Sam.
Man, you know what? Most of my wish listed games have already been talked about in one capacity or another. Inscription. I played Pony Island back in the day, and then just recently, actually, for part of my Patreon game club, played The Hex, which I hadn't realized until I played it was related to Pony Island, and then Inscription essentially sort of tying off the loosely affiliated trilogy. I don't know if it ties it off now that I think about it, just it's the third one, and they're all somewhat connected. I So yeah, now that I've played the Hex and really enjoyed that, I really want to get through Inscription, which I did. Did I buy it or did I not? I'm going to soon if I haven't. I'm excited to get to that. It Takes Two, which I purchased, found it on sale, and of course wanted that because I like co-op story games and got to play that. Deathloop, I did actually buy and then start just recently. So like
Nice.
I included Endwalker and Infinite in my favorites because I've played enough of them to say they're solidly there. I haven't played enough of Deathloop to be sure yet. It hasn't grabbed me in the same way that Prey did, which is my favorite of Arcane's games. But it's really neat and really clever, and I am enjoying it a lot. So we'll see how that progresses. But yeah, SMT5. Also, I have not actually played any of the basic Shin Megami Tensei games. I tried 4, and the first battle killed me over and over and over again for some reason. I'm not bad at these games,
hard.
but for some reason, yeah, I guess. Like, I could not, so I ended up not playing more of that. I'd like to try again at some point, I guess, but since 5 has come out and everyone's talking about how great it is, I would like to try that. Let's see. My other wish lists are Life is Strange True Colors.
Yeah.
I really like the first Life is Strange, and still, for some reason, have not played the second one. I know that opinion is somewhat mixed on that, but I know some people who really, really love it, and I want to play it. So, and I know, for that matter, I know it's not connected to True Colors, but, I want to play it, so I'm gonna.
Same situation. Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah,
we're all in that same boat. We all loved 1 and didn't play 2.
Yeah, like I may as it's the same reason I still haven't played The Witcher 3 because I want to play 2. I've heard it's good. I want to play. So like
2 is hard to go back to. As a fan of 2, it's hard to
exactly.
go back to.
Yeah, like I know that I could just jump in at 3, but I know that 2 is also good, and that 3 is going to spoil me, and I want to play. It's just a whole. Like I even tried playing 1. There's a lot I admire about The Witcher 1, but man, it's hard to do. So anyway, so yeah, so I want to play Life is Strange 2 Colors. I'm really excited about that. I just, I want to play Life is Strange 2 first. And for that matter, I also got, there are other, Dontnod's other game, why am I forgetting what that's called? Tell Me Why. I got that. I think that's from the year before, but I haven't played it yet. So yeah, that too. I was blindsided to find out that apparently the Guardians of the Galaxy game is really, really good.
Who would have seen that coming?
Yeah, I know, right? Like, I just assumed it wouldn't, nothing would come of that. But then suddenly my gaming Twitter sphere was blowing up over how amazing it was. So I'll get that at some point too, I guess. I'm looking forward to that. And then last but not least, speaking of games that I haven't played yet just because I need to play the first ones, Psychonauts 2.
Yeah.
I have heard nothing but incredible, like, game of the year, game of all time level praise for Psychonauts 2. And I have not finished Psychonauts 1. I have started it twice. I didn't fall off of it because it was bad. I was enjoying it very much. I couldn't tell you why I fell off of it, but it's fun. I want to play the first one first because 2 is apparently really incredible. So I'm looking forward to that. That's definitely high on my wish list for this year's games. So
that's amazing.
I don't think you need to finish 2 to play, or I'm sorry, finish 1 to play 2 in Psychonauts.
I'm sure, but I'm going to anyway.
Okay, fair enough.
I want to regardless because it's also good, and
games.
I have played a couple of hours of Guardians of the Galaxy. Same deal. I was really surprised the fanfare that it came out with. I think the story of that game's launch is really like, hey, we're not the Avengers, and they tried to market it as such, and evidently pulled it off. And the thing that I was hearing most about it was like, hey, they never stop talking. It's just constant dialogue of Guardians of the Galaxy. And boy, is that true. They do not shut up. And if you just sit there, they just keep talking. And you're like, okay, I just got to keep moving because I want to play this game. But yeah, you could sit there and listen to them talk for a long time. So I'm looking forward to
any other franchise, I would hear that and think that's a terrible, terrible thing. But Guardians, like, if the writing is even like half as good as the movies are, I could just listen to them banter forever. So.
All right, well, let's transition to some games here that we played last year, but they didn't come out this year, and this is all in an effort of being like, hey, you don't have to play the latest and greatest games to enjoy yourself. You can play older games and have a good time. And let's just talk until we're out of time. I think we have enough games here that we'll be able to do that. So should I go first? I guess that's the order we've gone.
Yeah, go for it. Lead us off.
So I've been talking about how I don't have a PlayStation. I haven't traditionally had a PlayStation. And so I moved in with my roommate this year, and he had a PlayStation. He had a PlayStation 4, and I went, "Oh, you have a PlayStation? You mean now I can play The Last of Us? Now I can play Spider-Man, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, all these games, right? That people are like, oh, you gotta play the all-time great game." And I was just like, from the sidelines, go friends. So I only managed to get through a few of them, unfortunately, and I'm not entirely sure. I'm kind of kicking myself that I'm going to run out of time and not be able to play some of them. But I did play Marvel's Spider-Man, and it was... Okay, this is like a game that a lot of people really love, right? Like, it's like, Marvel Spider-Man, best that... And I'm like, I get it, I understand it, but I'm also like, this is, like... All the open world elements of Marvel Spider-Man are the same things I dislike in the other games, right? Like, all the different things you have to do in the game and all this stuff. Like, I played through the main storyline, and I had a fantastic time. The traversal system... Listen, I played Spider-Man 2 like hundreds of hours as a child on the original Xbox. Just swinging around the city, I could do that for a very long time, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So... that in itself was worth the experience. The combat was also very entertaining. All of the variety that you can do with the skills and the costumes that they gave you were very generous and all this stuff. I enjoyed it, but I couldn't play more of it. I played the main story. I enjoyed myself. I was like, I had a good time being Spider-Man, but it was not an all-time game for me, like it is for a lot of people, unfortunately.
See, I understand disliking, because you're right, a lot of the open world elements are the same. The thing is that if even the games that I'm most annoyed about with their open world element, like if I could swing around like Spider-Man in a Far Cry game, I probably wouldn't be complaining about the open world. Like, just going to each random thing was so much fun that I didn't,
Yeah.
Also, honestly, probably my favorite, Otto Octavius. I really loved the way that character was handled in that story. It hit me pretty hard. I liked it. So,
Kato said the same thing you were talking about. And it's funny, like, I don't know why, but literally the story for me, for some reason, was just an afterthought. Like, I was just swinging around and fighting people, and then the story was there. And a lot of people were really invested in it, and maybe it's just because I tend to be a little more immune to narrative and story than most people. And, I mean, we have a guy on here called Games as Literature, so, maybe that's a little bit of heresy. But, yeah, I don't know. It kind of was just a side thing for me, the story, sadly.
It occurs to me...
had me crying. I am not
the ending was really good.
I was in tears.
Did Miles Morales? Okay, no, Miles Morales was last year. I was gonna say that would be on my list too if the Miles Morales spinoff was this year, but no, it was last year. So
that needs to be on my wish list. I still have not played that, which is
I don't think it's as good as the first one, but it is it's similar. It's close. It's really really good.
So good. I think I got it in my head that was going to be a PS5 exclusive, even though it wasn't. It never was. But there was confusion when it was first announced.
Yeah.
I think I just got that in my head.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kato, you can go.
So, one of our goals, Heather and my goal before our son was born, was to finish 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, which was a PS4, I think PS4 exclusive. That came out a couple years ago. It is, if you haven't heard of this game, that's not really surprising. It's a very niche game from a very niche company. It is one of the best video game stories ever told, and if you have not played it, you absolutely should. It is, thank God, being ported to other consoles now. It is supposed to come out on Switch, I believe, in March. I could be wrong on that date. But I know it is coming early this year to Switch. And if you enjoy video game stories at all, absolutely buy 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim.
I really need to get back to that one. I liked what I played.
Incredible. Like, where they go with that story is amazing. And I would love to see a Games is Lit episode about that game for what it's worth.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I know you got a lot
I'll keep it in mind.
Yeah, I know you got a lot going on, but it is absolutely a story worth experiencing, and it is one that really only games can tell. And it's just, it seems confusing. I really can't even begin to describe it because it doesn't sound good on paper. It just works. It just absolutely works. So when that comes on Switch, everyone should go out and buy it.
That's great.
Well, let's see. I already covered the big game that came out before that I played this year, which was, of course, Final Fantasy XIV. So I I did finally, not the first time I played it, but I did finally finish Knights of the Old Republic for the first time.
The original.
Speaking of,
well, obviously the remake's not out yet.
Right, yeah. So speaking of BioWare games that are good in a lot of ways, except absolutely hell to play, I did not enjoy the experience of playing Knights of the Old Republic.
No.
There's a lot that I like about Knights of the Old Republic. There's some good Star Wars stuff, some good, like you could see a lot of the elements of cinematic, like the visual presentation that they would later sort of refine and make work a little better with subsequent Dragon Age and Mass Effect games. Like, there's a lot of stuff to love about Knights of the Old Republic. I just wish that it was even a little bit fun to play. It's not. I really just like. The only way to describe it is, okay, like, imagine Final Fantasy 12, except no Gambit system. Just gone. The only thing that, like, I really like Final Fantasy 12's gameplay. It's the only thing I really like about Final Fantasy 12, because I like the Gambit system. It's the same thing that I really, Dragon Age Origins plays on its base level very similarly to Knights of the Old Republic, but it lets you do that, like, programming of how your ally, that meta strategy that makes it really cool and rewarding, and I love it. Knights of the Old Republic doesn't have that. It's just really boring and convoluted, and your eyes glaze over when you're trying to read the descriptions of exactly how abilities work. Because it's basically just like D&D 3.0 or 3.5 or whatever, one of them.
Star Wars, yeah.
Yeah, put into a Star Wars video game, and it's just not fun. But there is a lot of stuff to like about it in, the normal ways that there's a lot of stuff to like about a good BioWare game. The characters, the story, it really did a lot to expand the Star Wars universe in an interesting and interactive way at a time when that hadn't really been done very successfully, and that's cool. The plot twist holds up. I was even spoiled on it, unfortunately, because there are some guides out there that refer... I can't even... There are some guides out there that spoil a plot twist just by describing what it is that happens, like what it is you're supposed to be doing, and that is annoying to me, but, it was good. I wish it was fun, but it was good, so I hope that the remake basically captures what works about Knights of the Old Republic and also makes it at all enjoyable, because that would be good. So yeah.
Classic BioWare was so weird about making, like, they only made tabletop adaptations until I think it was Dragon Age Origins was their first one that wasn't, and they never marketed it that way. So, like,
right.
I mean, Baldur's Gate, you'd have a hard time playing Baldur's Gate and not know it's D&D related, but they don't teach you anything about how that game works. So, like, if you go into Baldur's Gate, it's just like, yeah, this axe does 2d6 damage. Hope you know what that means. And Star Wars, like Knights of the Old Republic, they don't tell you that that's based on the tabletop game anywhere. It's just they're just like, no, it's just a Star Wars game. Just go in and play it. Like, you play Dark Forces, come in and play Knights of the Old Republic.
Yep.
And people are like, what is this, turns? What are you talking about? Reading those force powers is just like impossible to understand unless you shift your brain to be like, okay, this is a tabletop system. Like, that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
Anyway, I totally agree.
I'll go. 2021 for me was interesting in that I started to get a lot more into speedrunning, particularly in the latter half of the year. I've always been fascinated with GDQ, Games Done Quick, the annual marathon speedrunning event. But I particularly latched onto it from the same guy who got me into Super Auto Pets. He started to just randomly out of nowhere, he's not a speedrunner, but he was like, hey, Super Mario 64. All my friends are speedrunning Super Mario 64 right now for the first time. They're learning all the strategies. So, I'm going to do it. And so I was watching him. I was like, man, this is reasonable. This is fun. I could do something like this. I can't get world record because that's absolutely insane, the amount of time that they grind into that. But, I could learn some of these strategies that look impressive but are actually very easy. And so, I did that, and I played Super Mario 64 for the first time. And I completed Super Mario 64, and you know what my experience of that game is? It's the 16 stars that it takes to speedrun that game. I know absolutely zero about anything else in that video game. So,
you picked an all-time classic game, like one of the greatest games of all time, and are like, how can I skip all of this?
It's like watching The Godfather at 5 times speed or something. Well, comparing Super Mario 64 to The Godfather is weird. Also, I like Sunshine better, but, still.
Sunshine was my game as well.
I know that's a hot take, but I love Sunshine, and I will die on this hill.
Yeah, that was... I had a GameCube as a kid, not an N64, so Sunshine was my game, but Yeah, I don't know, just you know, there's just some absolute classic speedrunning moments from Super Mario 64, which is arguably the biggest speedrunning game in the world. You know, there's you take the little bunny in that game and you clip him through the door. There's backwards long jumps. There's cannonless where you just like clip through a wall and get a star for no reason, but it has a very specific setup that you need to do where you punch and turn the camera left and right and go down and up, and you know, and it's so gratifying just to do those things that I don't even care about what's going on in the rest of the game. So anyway, I played that for the first time. It's a lot of fun. If you've never speedrun before because you thought it was unattainable, unrealistic, you know, go check that out. It's I had a tremendous time doing that, and I haven't like speedrunning now is not like in my play style. I'm not going to be speedrunning any other games. I'm actually working on some videos about speedrunning. I've been interviewing a ton of people from other communities, so I'm going to be producing something there. But otherwise, yeah. Anyway, that was me. That was me last year.
Well, at some point, you're going to need to actually play through Super Mario 64, because it is a really solid game when
I believe it.
you know, actually have to get all the stars. If you can handle the N64 controller, because that's the only thing that really holds that game back.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I played with an Xbox controller.
That's a good choice.
I'm sure that's better. That three-pronged monstrosity just boggles my mind.
Right? What were they thinking?
Yeah.
So speaking of controllers, this is actually not about controllers, but one of my top games that was non-2021 was Control, which is
I need to finish that.
It is so good.
So good.
I had been putting this game off for years. The only reason I didn't play this when it came out was because I didn't think my computer could handle it well. I wanted to have like an optimal experience, because Alan Wake is still one of, I don't know how well the gameplay holds up. Honestly, it's been a long time since I played that. But
it's fine.
It's fine. There you go. The narrative whole is just like ingrained in my mind as one of the best gaming stories out there, and I wanted Control to live up to that. I totally skipped over Quantum Break, but I wanted Control to live up to Alan Wake.
That's right. You know, it's like Quantum Break is it's
which
yeah.
I have
it's
been
worth
replaying.
Playing.
I've been playing Quantum Break, so I'm like halfway through that game now.
Okay, yeah.
So...
No, it's Quantum. It's a game. It's worth it. You can play it. It's oh man, yeah.
Yeah, and it is fascinating seeing how many of those ideas evolved into what Control became. Quantum Break is not one of my top 2021 or non-2021 games, but Control absolutely is, because it just feels perfect. Like everything about it, the shooting is so much fun. Maybe this was just me. I know Adrian and I talked about this before, and you found the gameplay to be very different. I don't know, Sam, about your experience, but like every battle, it didn't feel overly stressful, but it felt like I could die. Like it didn't feel like this was just a throwaway fight. You know, anytime enemies popped up, if they flanked me weird, or if I wasn't prepared for it, it was very likely that they were just gonna like come over beside me and kill me. I died a lot, but I never felt like that Souls-like level of frustration over dying. I always wanted to come back and do it again. The powers just feel so good. Using all the different abilities in tandem was so much fun. Every single battle, the world that they created for that game, which was, you know, very much based around like fan communities around kind of internet horror, and being able to turn that into a world, was just wonderful. I loved every moment of that game. I played through both the DLC packs, and even though the first one is definitely a low point for the game, I still loved playing through it. I still enjoyed pretty much every moment of it, getting to read every single file, every document, and just learning about these ridiculous altered items that do ridiculous things. One of my favorite subquests or side quests in any game ever will remain having a duck just quack at me for several minutes, just quacking, and it was just wonderful, and I recommend it to everyone. I'm amazed that it ran as well as it did on my PC. So even though it is a graphical powerhouse, even if you have an older rig, it should be able to play that game, and I recommend it.
I really that year, I got Control and Death Stranding as soon as they came out. Really wanted to play them, started playing them, loved them, didn't finish them. I don't even know why, and I still need to get back to them. I have them both on
Still haven't played
PS5
Death
now.
Stranding.
Yeah, they're both really good. They're extremely different, obviously, but they're really good. And I've been wanting to get back to Control so much, and I just haven't. I need to.
It's very worth
Final
finishing,
Fantasy.
especially Final Fantasy just absorbed your time.
Yep.
No, if you love Alan Wake like I do, the second DLC is very worth playing. And
Yes,
even if you are
I'm sure.
already excited for Alan Wake 2, that will only improve that.
I'm sure.
Yeah, the Control for me was just the launch ability. Like, that was the whole... Like, in the same way that Spider-Man, I could just swing around all day. Man, you give me any random object in the environment, just pick it up and chuck it at someone, that was... I'm having a good time. So, yeah, I mean... of course, fantastic story that they had and just world building off the charts. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with Control for sure.
All right. Well, my other big one that is old that I played this year was a Ghost Trick Phantom Detective.
Yeah.
Because I've got a backlog still that I'm working through, but it's embarrassing how long it's been since someone paid me on Patreon to analyze Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. And so I finally did. I finally got around to it. And it's really good. It's a really fun little mystery game. The animation is really like all the it's a, two-dimensional like side-scrolling setup. Calling it a side-scrolling game would severely misrepresent its gameplay, but like visually speaking, that's how it's presented. And all of the sprites are 3D models that were then converted into two-dimensional sprites, and it gives the game such a unique look. And the way that the characters move with such personality is so great. Like, just, it's a treat to look at. And a really fun, thematically consistent, and absolutely bonkers nonsense sci-fi mystery story. Like, I say nonsense, but like in a good way. It actually all comes together perfectly well. It's just also like, if I were to explain it to you right now, it would sound like absolute chaos.
It's one of those don't read the Wikipedia plot summary.
Seriously. Well, that's the thing. I made a video about it where I had to like summarize the story and then analyze its themes and such. And I just had to be like, look, I promise this is just as nuts as it sounds, but it makes so much more sense when you play it. Like, man, it really just kind of feels like the guy, because it's by the guy that made Phoenix Wright. You know, that's a game where you cross-examine a parrot to solve a murder. Like, it's not like it was ever going to be grounded necessarily, but it is just nuts in a good way. So yeah, no, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective was very fun, and I'm glad that I finally got around to playing that.
I think does anyone know if the iOS version still works? I know it was released on iOS, but it was a long time ago.
I hadn't even thought about whether it would still work. I just think the
DS one is hard to find.
A little bit, yeah. Folks. I mean, easy to emulate.
It looks like it is still available on mobile.
Sweet. Okay.
Yes, just saying, if they literally have not made it available to buy anywhere else, then that's an option. But yeah, if it's still on iOS, then cool.
It is such a good game. I wish more people played it at the time, and
yeah, that's good stuff.
Rip the DS. What a weird console.
Honestly, I love the hell out of the DS. There are so many weird, unique, great games on that console that just don't even get any love, even now. Yeah. It's one of my favorite consoles and libraries. It's so good.
I agree.
Speaking of, I guess, I mean, this is substantially older as a game, but, you talked about Metroid Dread earlier. I went the other way. I went to Super Metroid.
Yeah, it's a classic.
I played it for the first time. Yeah, Kato has been giving me these little challenges to go play some older retro games because, all my gaming knowledge prior to, like, 2008 is embarrassing. So, I love Metroidvanias. Hollow Knight's probably one of my favorite games of all time. And loved Ori, loved Bloodstained, and I had never played a Castlevania or a Metroid game before. And so it made logical sense to go to Super Metroid. I never completed it, unfortunately, because I did get to a section of the game where it's the part of the game where the power is off, and so they don't give you the save place because you haven't turned the power on yet. And so traveling from my previous save point all the way to the non-powered area and then dying, and then doing that like 5 times because I couldn't figure out how to beat the boss. I was like, I can't do this again. So maybe I'm gonna go back to it at some point and like follow a guide in terms of how to beat the boss or something like that. But
save states.
yeah,
If you're playing it on Switch, I mean, you have save states built in. I'm just saying.
that's what I should have been doing. Yeah, but
Yep,
anyway,
that's the way.
I was very impressed with how well it held up. Like, I was playing it and I was like, you could have told me that this was, released as like a retro throwback in the last 5 to 10 years or whatever, and I would have believed you. It's a very nice experience. Except for the wall jumping. If I didn't look up the fact that I had to do wall jumping, I would have been like, I have wall jumping? I had no idea. Thankfully I looked that up. But yeah, I mean, geez.
I've heard games sometimes don't do the best job of teaching you what you can do.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're really good at it, and sometimes they're not.
I mean, that was an intentional choice in Super Metroid. They didn't want to teach you the wall jump until later on, and then you could go back, play the game again, and realize there were all these places you could get to that you just didn't know you could.
And I should mention as well, I played this game for the first time with the help of a YouTube live stream chat who was telling me, like, hey, when in doubt, just like roll and place a bomb, and you're probably going to find what you need. And if they didn't tell me that, I would have been stuck in the first level and been like, Kato, why did you tell me to play this game? Like, so
I just wanted to torture you. That's
having people around to help me, guide me in terms of what I was supposed to do was definitely necessary. But otherwise, yeah, it was a fantastic game.
Just super quick, if you feel like delving into Castlevania too, I can't recommend the Sorrow games enough. Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow, those are my particular favorites, at least.
I agree.
The Switch recently got a Game Boy Advance Castlevania collection that's like $15, and it includes Aria of Sorrow. It's a really good one.
Awesome. Okay, that's great to know.
And then Dawn of Sorrow's never made it off the DS. I hope it does someday because it's really good.
All the GBA ones are really solid. They're really good games, but for very different reasons, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree. Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow are two of my favorites also.
Yeah.
So one game, if we have some time still, one game
I
played through.
Time.
Sweet. That I played through this year was Breath of the Wild, and this is actually a game.
Yeah.
It was the first game I got for Switch, like pretty much everybody who bought a Switch then. And it was the first game I played, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I was like, I just got a sword and it broke in 3 hits. This is ridiculous. I hate this so much. I was like, I want shrines, and I can't find any shrines because apparently I was just colossally failing at that game. I just really didn't like it, and I put it away and didn't play it again. And we were talking earlier this year, and I had played through Echoes of the Eye and was just really wanting an open world game where I could explore and find things, and everything was just kind of built into the game. I could play around with the mechanics, and basically I just described I wanted Breath of the Wild and was like, okay, maybe it's time to give that game another try. And I just wasn't in the right headspace for it the first time it came out. And being able to go in knowing about the absolutely atrocious weapon degradation system that I stand by, it's not good, even for what they were going for.
Whereas I stand by defending it, but that's another conversation.
Yeah. No, it's I don't hate the concept. I just don't like how they wound up doing it. But yeah, anyway, it's that game is incredible. The game's absolutely amazing, and that world is gorgeous. I loved exploring. When I really sat down and decided I was going to play a game where I just wanted to wander around and find whatever I would find, that game was absolutely perfect. And I'm glad I was able to go back into it with that headspace, because I don't think it's necessarily for everyone, and I don't think it's necessarily going to appeal to people that want that want a linear experience. It's not really great for that. But when you just want to engage with the world, it's so solid. And I wish the ending was better, but I did still really love the castle, like the Hyrule Castle segment.
Mm-hmm.
The Ganon fight was not good. And I'm very excited for Breath of the Wild 2 now. And all the times it's been delayed and I've been like, whatever, this is Breath of the Wild 2. Now I'm gonna feel it if it gets delayed again. So hopefully it comes out this year.
I've honestly never played a game that felt as intentionally designed as that one in terms of its world design to let you just literally just wander somewhere, see a thing, go, that looks interesting, and actually rewards you for it. So many
Mhm.
times playing an open world game, I'm like, that looks cool. What's that? It turns out it's a mountain. I can climb to the top of it, and then I'm there. Good for me. But like, there's always something there in Breath of the Wild. No matter what it is, if you just see something and think that looks weird, I'm going to check that out. There is a reason it looks weird, and you're going to be rewarded somehow for doing it.
So
It's
true.
just, yeah. I've never played a game before or since that was that consistent in that, and it was good stuff.
The first time I'm thinking back on it, the first time I played it, one of the things that bothered me so much and made the weapon degradation system a lot more frustrating than it should have been, was that that open world aspect to it, I could go anywhere, and I decided to go anywhere except where the leaf guy is at. The Korok that takes the Korok seeds and increases your
Oh,
inventory.
yep.
I never found him, so
Oh
I spent hours
no.
playing that game with the absolute minimal inventory space. And as soon as they start handing you items that are more utility weapons, stuff like the axe and the Korok leaf, I was just like, I can't carry any of this because now I can't carry weapons, and
Yep.
then it made the shrines frustrating. And yeah,
That would
so
do it.
anyway,
Yeah.
I do recommend, at least for the beginning of the game, even if you are the kind of person that loves just going off on your own and doing whatever, follow the plot at least for a little bit, and then go off and do your own thing.
Sam, do you have a final game to talk about at all?
You know what? I'll go ahead and throw one that I wasn't sure I was going to talk about because I haven't finished it yet. But I have, after being pressured and paid to talk about it on my show, finally started The House in Fata Morgana.
Ooh.
It's a visual novel
Huh.
that is another one that's hard to really describe. As far as I can tell so far, like I haven't finished it yet. Um, as far as I can tell, the sort of basic idea is that you are in this ancient house and being told of its history and the various people who have owned it by a maid who seems to have been alive throughout the house's entire very long history and is trying to get you to remember something about it. And that's sort of as far as I fully understand it. I've gotten through like two or three, no, three of the like stories of different time periods and people who lived in the house, but it is a visual novel. It has some choices and I guess it has some endings, and it got enough positive attention early on, despite not being very, like popular or widely played, that it has since been re-released on various platforms multiple times. You can get a Switch version that includes two like sequel and spin-off games. Um, it's really interesting. It's visually gorgeous. The story is very intense. There are some trigger warnings involved with it for sure, but it's very interesting. I'm really into it so far, and it's honestly probably going to become the first game that I play through to analyze, but then play through again before I actually like make the analysis video, because there's a lot. It's a visual novel, so it's like all words. It's very heavy and dense, and I might just have to do that twice to really pick up on everything before I make a video about it. But I've been enjoying that a lot. So, more on that someday when I finish it twice and make the video. Um,
You know, I feel like 2021 has been a really good year for visual novels. Like they're increasing in popularity like I was not expecting to see. Like, not that
yeah,
they're really a new genre. We've been getting, Phoenix Wright for a long time, and that brought a lot of westerners into it. And
yeah,
but like the Switch has gotten a lot of remakes of visual novels
yeah.
and various things that I think are bringing it more mainstream, and
It
it's
feels like we're
interesting to
finally
see.
getting a lot more of them localized.
Yeah.
Like, the Switch, the Vita was a really good place for that before, but of course 5 people owned a Vita, so that only meant so much. We're finally getting a lot of good ports on the Switch, and for that matter, the like erotic visual novel thing, which has always been a thing in Japan but hasn't really come over here all that much, has been getting a lot more localization on PC too. Like, it's a good time for the genre for sure. Which also reminds me, I didn't finish Boyfriend Dungeon. Boyfriend Dungeon is very fun. There was a lot of controversy about it. It was mostly extremely stupid. The game
Yes.
the game is fun and good. The whole thing was, oh no, why didn't the people didn't like that one of the characters is an asshole is basically what it was,
Yep.
honestly. Like, there's some more about the content warnings and stuff. There's some legitimate stuff there, but honestly.
But
It
they
was
did
such a
warn
weird,
you.
overblown. Well, yeah,
It was
like
terrible. They're like,
yeah,
why didn't they
I can
warn
agree
me?
that
They did.
I can agree that the wording wasn't super great or whatever, but it turned into like you need to tell me. Well, you shouldn't do this, and if you do, you need to tell me about it in detail before I even purchase the game because I can't stand that this guy is a jerk, and that it is more than jerk, admittedly. Like he's an actual
Yeah.
antagonist, real just piece of work, But it's a very fun, cute game about dungeon crawling with your sword that also turn into people that you can kiss. So like,
As someone who
enjoyed
does
it.
not
I
even
need to get
really
back to
enjoy
it.
dating sims, that game is pretty good. Like,
Yeah, it's fun. I like a good dating sim. And it so far it qualifies as one. I need to finish it. But anyway, yes, that's yeah.
Hey, no, on that absolutely wonderful note, we're at the 2 hour mark here, so I'm gonna wrap us out. Is there any like last call mentions we want to make?
I want a super quick mention that Adrian, your list has Final Fantasy X. I'm glad you played it. It's really good. So
oh,
Final Fantasy
Is it?
X. Yeah, I loved it.
Final Fantasy X is extremely. I
Yeah.
will fight you.
Yeah, me
that's
too.
Another podcast.
I
We
played-
need another podcast.
Oh boy.
I played Final Fantasy X as a kid. This was actually me replaying it and trying to see if
Oh,
it
okay.
lived up to my memories of loving it so much as a child. It was the only Final Fantasy game I had ever played as a kid too. And yeah, replaying it, I was like, exactly how I remember it. I loved everything about it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
loved it. Yeah.
10 is oh man, yeah. No. 10 is great. 10 is very very high. It's up there with like Lost Odyssey and games that I want
Whoa.
so much to make a video about. It's just that there's
Whoa.
so much there and it will be so much work, so I haven't done it yet. But yeah, no, 10 is great. I'm glad you replayed it, I guess, because yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey folks, if you made it all this way, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us talk about some of our favorite experiences playing video games. I had a lot of fun chatting with you too. And
Yeah, always fun. Always
Yeah.
a good time.
always a good time. And hey, if Sam, if people want to find you, where should they go?
Oh yeah, the main thing is the YouTube channel Games as Literature. If you just search Games as Lit 101, that's kind of the channel name's Games as Literature. The show is called Games as Lit 101. I'd recommend just heading in there, checking out the playlist of literary analysis videos, and finding a game that you really like, and watching that. Or find a game that you really hate. I haven't done a lot of bad games, but I did do Metroid Other M, and I tore it a new one because I hate it so much. So, but I did also make an actual effort to figure out what it was trying to say with its story and why it didn't work and was bad. But just that would be a good start. I've got a great one about Alan Wake. I have a friggin' 6-part series about The World Ends With You that I am really happy with and proud of. My Spec Ops Line video too, I like. If you just head in there, find an analysis of a game you like, that'll be a good start. I'm also on Twitter at GamesAsLit, and of course on Patreon. Also, that's support is good. So yeah.
If I could shill for a second, shill for Sam here. The Final Fantasy VII analysis on your channel is absolutely amazing.
I am also proud of that one.
It is fantastic. Yeah. So if you have any interest at all in the story of Final Fantasy VII and want to hear someone who really knows what they're talking about and really just diving deep into that series, I guarantee you'll hear stuff that you did not realize was there. See that game in a completely new light after watching that video. So I highly recommend that.
The first time the three of us ever did anything, it was after Sam had released that video, and the whole show that we did was just me being like, "Hey everyone, Sam did this cool thing. Okay, Kato, go ahead and talk to him about it." So
that was a lot of fun.
Yep. Also, I did just relatively recently do a video examining why the silly comedy slapstick side quests in Final Fantasy XIV are so funny. It's one of my least viewed videos, and I love it a lot, and I wish more people saw it. So if you like Hildebrand, then go watch.
So I need to play Final Fantasy XIV next year and then watch your video.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah. It's not very spoilery, so you can watch it if you want. I don't know how much you'd appreciate it without all the context, but you could, yes.
Then I will appreciate the quests when I reach them. So
yes, they're very good.
Kato, do you have anything to plug?
No, not really. Join the Patreon for Gaming Observer and listen to TGO Radio, where Adrian and I talk about games every week.
All right, folks. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you once again for tuning in, and hey, maybe we'll do this again next year because this is the second year in a row we've done it. So I don't know, maybe it's a thing. Who knows?
Always a fun time.
Always a fun time. Thanks, folks, and we'll talk to you soon.